Welcome. Tonight, we take a long and gentle journey through the year 1913, day by day. A year of steam and electricity, of kings and factories, of artists and engineers. A year suspended in a fragile peace just before the world began to crack. In this story, there are no heroes, no villains, only people going to concerts, writing letters, watching trains roll into new stations, discovering, failing, building, unaware of what's about to arrive. Let's begin. January 1st, 1913. In Berlin, soldiers march in a ceremonial parade under a pale winter sky. In Paris, cafes are full, despite the chill. In St. Petersburg, Orthodox churches hold services for the health of the Tsar. Newspapers describe frozen rivers and crowded ice rinks. Meanwhile, in New York, a new law takes effect. Workers in factories must now get 1 day off per week. A small, quiet revolution in labor. In London, protesters gather peacefully, asking for suffrage and bread. They wear sashes of green and violet. In Oslo, Norwegian officials meet to discuss the future of oil exploration. It is a small meeting. The word oil does not yet carry the weight it will in the decades to come. In Boston, a winter storm drops a foot of snow, paralyzing traffic and closing the harbor. Children cheer, dock workers curse. In Shanghai, the new republic is uneasy. Soldiers drill in silence outside the city gates. January 3rd. In Vienna, the Staatsoper opens its season with a grand performance of Richard Strauss's Der Rosenkavalier. The music glitters, but there's a certain tension in the audience. The monarchy feels tired. In Moscow, tram horses freeze in place as temperatures drop to minus 20 degrees Celsius. There are calls for full electrification of public transport, not yet reality. Meanwhile, in Buenos Aires, the sun scorches the pavement. 41 degrees in the shade. Newspaper headlines read, "People take shelter under bridges." 3 days into the new year, and already glimpses of beauty, struggle, invention. We continue tomorrow. January 4th, 1913. In Istanbul, the Bosphorus is quiet this morning. Fishermen repair nets by hand. The Ottoman Empire is tired but proud. Some worry it is shrinking. Others say it is merely changing shape. In Warsaw, the smell of coal hangs heavy in the morning fog. Children run through alleys, laughing, bundled in wool. Policemen wear long coats and rarely smile. Across the Atlantic, in Chicago, a new meatpacking law goes into effect. Factory owners grumble. Workers remain silent. The law says knives must now be cleaned twice a day. It's a start. January 5th. Sunday. Across Europe, church bells ring. In Prague, a group of poets meet in a smoky apartment to discuss symbolism and death. They do not know that within a year, many of them will wear uniforms. In Madrid, the king attends a bullfight. A photographer snaps a photo at the moment the bull's horn brushes the matador's leg. The photo will appear in dozens of newspapers. Some see poetry in it, others see a warning. In Buenos Aires, a child is born in a small hospital with iron beds and open windows. His name is Jorge Luis Borges. He will grow up to love words more than anything else. But today, he sleeps, unaware of himself. January 6th. Epiphany. In Rome, priests in gold vestments lead candlelit processions through narrow streets. The smell of incense mixes with wood smoke and warm bread. In the countryside, peasants bless their fields with holy water. In St. Petersburg, the Tsar's family celebrates in private. Nicholas writes in his diary, "We had tea. The children were cheerful. Alexei coughed in the evening." In Detroit, a young man named Henry Ford pushes a new idea: the moving assembly line. Faster, cheaper, more predictable. His engineers think he's mad, but they try it anyway. January 7th. In Tokyo, the emperor reviews a military parade in silence. Japan has grown confident since the Russo-Japanese War. The officers march with precise, almost mechanical discipline. A foreign journalist notes, "They look like steel." In Munich, a frustrated painter applies for an exhibit and is rejected. Again. His name is Adolf Hitler. He walks back to his boarding house alone, unaware that the city is already changing him. In New York, the Woolworth building rises higher each day. Soon it will be the tallest in the world. Men balance on beams above the clouds. One of them writes home, "Mama, the sky is very close here." January 8th. In Vienna, a train station opens 2 new platforms. The brass band plays. Children wave flags. No one realizes this will be one of the last peaceful expansions of the city for years to come. In London, suffragettes chain themselves to government gates. Policemen unbolt them gently, then not so gently. The crowd watches in silence. A small boy claps. His mother pulls his hand down. In Budapest, a man invents a new card game involving colored numbers and letters. He has no name for it yet, but one day children will call it Uno. 5 more days pass. The year moves forward, quiet, steady, unaware of the clouds above. Tomorrow brings January 9th. January 9th, 1913. In Paris, the Seine begins to rise after days of rain. Boatmen secure their barges. Children toss sticks into the current and watch them vanish. A man paints the river from his attic window. Later no one will remember his name, but the painting will survive. In Berlin, a scientist proposes a radical idea: That time might not be constant. He is ignored. His name is forgotten too. But another man with wild hair and an odd accent is taking notes. In Rio de Janeiro, summer is in full swing. Markets are loud, mangoes are sweet. A woman faints from the heat. A policeman fans her with his cap. Small kindness under a burning sun. January 10th. In Dublin, coal shortages begin to bite. People queue outside factories with tin pails, hoping to buy scraps. A local priest gives his own supply to the elderly. He catches pneumonia 2 days later. In Cairo, archaeologists argue over who has the right to dig near the Valley of the Kings. Tourists in pith helmets take photographs in front of half-excavated ruins. One child picks up a stone that is, unknowingly, 3,000 years old. She puts it in her pocket. In Montreal, the first electric streetcars begin regular operation. Horses watch with suspicion from icy alleys. January 11th. In St. Petersburg, the Tsar receives telegrams from across the empire. He reads each one silently, then sets it aside. Later he will forget them all, except one from a small mining town. It reads, "God save Russia, we are hungry." In Edinburgh, a young nurse writes a letter to her brother. Everything feels strange, like the world is holding its breath. She folds the letter, seals it, posts it. It will arrive too late. He will be gone by the summer. In Cape Town, zebras wander close to the city edge, confused by new construction. Children throw them fruit. Their teacher explains what extinction means. January 12th, Sunday. In Rome, the Pope speaks to a crowd in 12 languages. Some understand, others just listen to the rhythm of his voice. He says, "Do not mistake peace for silence." In Washington, Congress debates how to control the banking system. The words Federal Reserve begin to appear in newspapers. Nobody is quite sure what it will be. Everyone has an opinion. The arguments will last for months, the effects for decades. In Seoul, the streets are quiet. Korea is occupied and the new year brings little joy. But under blankets and candlelight, stories continue to be told, forbidden tales whispered between generations. January 13th. In Stockholm, a photographer captures frost clinging to the eyelashes of a coal worker. The photo becomes a local legend. People call it the face of winter. In Istanbul, a cafe serves its last batch of Yemeni coffee. The trade route is failing. Supplies grow thin. Regulars sit longer than usual. They know change is coming, though they can't name it. In San Francisco, a woman opens a typewriter school. She has 8 machines and a dream. By next year, she will have 50 students, all women. She tells the press, "A girl who types will never starve." And so, the second week ends, cities shift, ideas stir. 1913 walks quietly forward. Tomorrow brings January 14th.
January 14th, 1913, Berlin.
In the Reichstag, a storm brews. Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg faces increasing opposition from both the left and the right. The Social Democrats criticize military spending, while conservatives accuse the Chancellor of weakness. A single session lasts over 10 hours, mostly due to shouting, accusations, and procedural chaos. The German press calls it the most unproductive day in Reichstag history. January 15th, Pittsburgh. Steel output in Carnegie Mills reaches a new record. Over 12,000 tons of steel are processed in 24 hours. But in the worker barracks, the mood is grim. 4 deaths and 11 injuries have occurred in the last 3 days.
There will be no public inquiry. The newspapers mention the record, not the blood. January 16th, London.
Emily Davison, the well-known suffragette, releases a pamphlet titled Prisoner, Patriot, Woman. In it, she recounts her forced feedings during hunger strikes in prison.
Public reaction is mixed. The Daily Mail calls her a hysteric, while others describe her as a martyr.
Davison announces she will attend every male-dominated political event this year. January 17th, Paris. At the Théâtre Antoine, a new play début, Le crime d'un jeune riche, the crime of a young rich man. Critics applaud its brutal honesty. The protagonist, a wealthy banker's son, murders a beggar just to see if he will be punished. He is not. The audience leaves in silence. January 18th, Istanbul. In the streets of Constantinople, tension rises. An Armenian church is vandalized, its stained glass shattered. Pause 2 seconds. The local governor blames provocateurs, but offers no protection. This is the 5th such incident in 2 months.
January 19th, New York.
A photograph circulates in the newspapers. 5 young children asleep on a wooden floor in an East Side tenement. The image, taken by Jacob Riis's apprentice, sparks a minor outrage. Mayor Gaynor promises a new housing initiative.
3 days later, the plan is quietly shelved. January 20th, Vienna.
Sigmund Freud delivers a private lecture to fellow physicians on narcissism. He theorizes that every person must turn some part of their love inward before it can be given outward. One doctor calls it blasphemy, another an epiphany.
Freud simply leaves the room.
January 21st, Moscow. It is minus 24 degrees Celsius and 7,000 workers from the dynamo factory strike for better hours. A protest banner reads, "We make power, but have none." Police intervene by nightfall. There are 47 arrests, 3 disappearances. January 22nd, Buenos Aires. A banker's mansion catches fire. Rumors spread of arson, fueled by resentment toward rising inequality. In the rubble, investigators find 3 locked safes untouched by flame.
Each safe contains only documents, not a single peso. January 23rd, Tokyo.
In the Imperial University, a group of students forms the Society for the Advancement of Modern Science. Their motto: "The world is not sacred, it is knowable." The group publishes a paper proposing public weather stations across the Japanese archipelago.
The press ignores them, but the Navy does not.
January 24th, Rome. Pope Pius X delivers a homily condemning the disease of modernism. He warns that faith is eroding under the weight of machines, money, and doubt.
The crowd in St. Peter's Square cheers, but quietly.
January 25th, Chicago.
At Hull House, Jane Addams leads a discussion on child labor. She reads aloud testimonies of 11-year-olds working in textile mills. A journalist remarks, "No one clapped, no one had to."
January 26th, Munich. An aspiring artist named Adolf Hitler submits 2 new watercolors to the Academy of Fine Arts. Both are rejected again.
He spends the evening at a beer hall sketching strangers. January 27th, Calcutta.
Rabindranath Tagore finishes a new poem titled "The Voice of the River." He reads it aloud to his students. They weep. That night, a British official in the audience writes in his diary, "If only his kind ruled the empire." January 28th, Washington, D.C.
Woodrow Wilson, President-elect, meets with economists to plan his new freedom reforms. Among the topics, the creation of a central banking system.
One aide suggests calling it the Federal Reserve.
Wilson simply nods.
January 29th, Paris. A heated debate erupts in the French Chamber of Deputies over the military's use of colonial troops. One deputy declares, "We defend civilization with the hands of those we have not civilized."
The chamber falls silent. The proposal to expand the African Corps passes anyway.
January 30th, Detroit.
Henry Ford announces a trial of the new moving assembly line.
Initial results. faster production, higher stress, and 2 injuries per hour. Workers complain of nausea, exhaustion, and confusion. Management calls it progress.
January 31st, Oslo. Roald Amundsen returns from a lecture tour, weary but triumphant.
He is asked whether he plans to return to the poles. He answers, "I have found the coldest places on earth. They do not compare to certain rooms full of men." February 1st, Shanghai. The provisional Chinese government issues a new currency, the yuan. Merchants react with caution. Rural markets still prefer silver coins or rice. One farmer tells a reporter, paper burns, rice feeds. February 2nd, Dublin. James Joyce receives a letter. Dubliners has once again been rejected by a London publisher.
He responds by writing a new short story, Grace, and mails it the same night. His brother, Stanislaus, writes in his journal, "He will starve on brilliance and smile while doing it."
February 3rd, Berlin. Albert Einstein publishes a paper refining his theory of specific heat. In a letter to a colleague, he writes, "I am more certain of math than of matter. Matter can lie."
The paper is barely noticed for now.
February 4th, Mexico City. President Madero faces growing unrest. Whispers of military plots echo through the city. In the morning, General Huerta visits Madero. They shake hands. By evening, Huerta meets secretly with rebel leaders. February 5th, London. Emmeline Pankhurst is arrested again during a protest for women's suffrage. This time she sets fire to a postbox before being taken.
At the station, she tells a constable, "When reason is jailed, fire walks free."
February 6th, Istanbul. The Ottoman Empire enacts a censorship decree limiting foreign language publications. German, French, and Armenian newspapers protest. Within days, 2 presses are shut down. The editors vanish.
February 7th, New York. On Wall Street, rumors spread of a coming banking reform. Morgan and Rockefeller representatives meet behind closed doors.
One financier notes in his diary,
"The tide is changing. Best we own the harbor before it does."
February 8th, St. Petersburg.
At a secret meeting of Bolshevik organizers, concerns rise about infiltration.
A young man named Joseph Jugashvili suggests purging the inner circle. Lenin disagrees, for now. February 9th, Philadelphia. The first official meeting of the American Anthropological Association of 1913 begins. Speakers present on race science, social evolution, and the vanishing Indian. Franz Boas sits quietly in the back, taking notes. February 10th, Milan.
Futurist painters exhibit works of machine worship, bold lines, explosive colors.
The press calls it glorious lunacy. An elderly critic mutters, "This is how civilization ends, with a motor car in every painting." February 11th, Cape Town. Sol Plaatje writes a letter to the Times of London protesting new land restrictions for black South Africans. It will never be printed.
But copies circulate quietly in churches and rail stations.
February 12th, New Orleans. Louis Armstrong, age 11, is caught firing a pistol during Mardi Gras.
He is arrested and sent to the Colored Waifs Home for Boys.
There, he is handed a battered cornet. It makes its first sound that same night. February 13th, Vienna. Sigmund Freud delivers a lecture on dreams and repression. A skeptical student asks, "What if there is no unconscious?"
Freud smiles and replies,
"Then explain your mother's face in your nightmares." February 14th, Buenos Aires. Valentine's Day sees record sales of chocolate and foreign perfume.
But the local paper reports 5 duels fought that afternoon.
Love, it seems, is not without blood. February 15th, Tokyo. An earthquake rattles the Kanto region, mild but symbolic.
In government chambers, a general remarks,
"The land groans when men plot war."
Nobody laughs. February 16th, Boston.
Emily Green Balk publishes an essay titled "Peace Begins with Bread."
She argues that hunger is the truest weapon of war. The essay is ignored by most newspapers except a socialist weekly in Detroit. February 17th, Pretoria. Mahatma Gandhi is arrested for leading a protest of Indian mine workers. He refuses bail, choosing jail to prove a point.
A British official notes,
He is small, but gravity answers to him, not the other way around. February 18th, Constantinople. The Grand Vizier convenes an emergency council to discuss the Balkan front.
Losses are mounting, supplies are low. One advisor proposes suing for peace, another calls it treason. The meeting ends with no decision. February 19th, Chicago. The industrial workers of the world stage a textile strike. Women and children form the front line. Police respond with clubs. A photo the next day shows a 12-year-old girl with a bloodied sign reading, "I am not property." February 20th, Moscow. At the Bolshoi Theatre, a young ballerina named Olga Spesivtseva performs to thunderous applause. Critics call her a living ghost, stitched from silk and sorrow. She smiles only once during the final bow. February 21st, Paris. Claude Debussy attend the début of La Tragédie de Salomé. He is silent through most of it, then murmurs. Too many notes, not enough silence. The composer never speaks to him again. February 22nd, Washington, D.C. President William Howard Taft delivers one of his last public speeches. He defends his record, saying, "History will judge, but she has never liked fat men." The press, for once, laughs with him. February 23rd, Madrid. King Alfonso XIII attends a military parade. Protesters line the streets in silence, holding signs with a single word, pan. Bread. The king does not look at them. February 24th, Munich. In a beer hall, a fringe nationalist group gathers. A failed painter listens silently. He says nothing that night, but he returns the next week. February 25th, Calcutta. Rabindranath Tagore finishes editing Gitanjali for its English publication. He writes in his diary, "I do not write for the world. I write so I may breathe." The manuscript leaves by steamer the next morning. February 26th, Sarajevo. A young student named Gavrilo Princip is suspended for truancy. That afternoon, he walks along the river with a friend, speaking softly about freedom and empires. He says, "We must aim straight. There is no next time." February 27th, Detroit. Henry Ford signs off on a new plan. Double wages, shorten hours. His managers protest. Ford says, "Let them rest. They'll buy the car they build." By the end of the month, factory applications double. February 28th, London. Emily Davison, the suffragette, is released from prison after another hunger strike. Doctors warn she may not survive another one. She says quietly, "If the world must wake, someone must ring the bell." March 1st, New York. The New York Times runs a headline, "Electric elevators to reach higher than ever before." The article predicts that skyscrapers may one day touch 80 stories. A reader writes in, "And who would want to live that far from the ground?" March 2nd, Berlin. Albert Einstein lectures on time, motion, and mass. A colleague jokes, "You're just rearranging Newton's furniture." Einstein replies, "No, I'm rebuilding the house." March 3rd, Dublin. Workers organize a candlelight vigil for those killed in recent labor clashes. Police do not intervene. The only violence is the wind, blowing out every flame before midnight. March 4th, Washington, D.C. Woodrow Wilson is inaugurated as the 28th President of the United States. He promises to bring morality back to politics. In the crowd, a black journalist mutters, "God help us, he means white morality." March 5th, Rome. The Vatican publishes a new encyclical urging peace among European powers.
Few diplomats read it. Even fewer care.
A cardinal notes, "When nations prepare for war, God prepares to be ignored." March 6th, St. Petersburg. The Okhrana intercepts a shipment of illegal printing presses. They find pamphlets titled "Freedom Can Be Learned." All copies are burned. The flames, however, light the room quite well.
March 7th, Buenos Aires. A poet named Alfonsina Storni performs at a women's literary club. She reads from a new piece. "We are not born silent, we are taught to whisper." She receives no applause, only thoughtful silence. March 8th, Berlin. Clara Zetkin leads a march for International Women's Day.
Tens of thousands take to the streets. Men jeer from the sidewalks. Later, in a pub, one of them says, "If women ran the world, we'd have no wars."
He laughs. No one joins in.
March 9th, Damascus. A rare snowfall silences the ancient city. Minarets wear white like turbans of peace. A child throws a snowball at a French soldier. The soldier throws one back. March 10th, Tokyo. At a university lecture, a professor explains that Japan must modernize or vanish. He points to a map of Europe and says, "They won't wait for us." A student in the back writes quietly in his notebook, "Empire or nothing." March 11th, Vienna. In a smoky cafe, Gustav Klimt sketches a woman's face on the back of a receipt. It's quick, rough, almost careless, but unmistakably his. He gives it to the waitress with a nod. She keeps it folded in a Bible for the rest of her life. March 12th, Boston. A debate breaks out at Harvard. Should women be allowed full degrees? The room is split. One young man stands and says, "If they pass the exams, what else is there to argue?" He is booed. March 13th, Mecca. Pilgrims arrive early this year, citing unusual winds and dreams of urgency. A trader sells water at double price, then feels shame and gives it away free. He later says, "I saw a man's face and thought it was my brother's, but I have no brother." March 14th, Brussels. A train derails outside the city. 10 dead. Among the injured, a nun hums to calm a crying boy. A doctor hears her and begins to hum too. For a moment, the wreck is quiet like a cathedral. March 15th, Paris. At the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées, rehearsals begin for a controversial ballet, The Rite of Spring. A dancer injures her ankle on the jagged choreography. The composer, Igor Stravinsky, simply says, "Good. Pain has rhythm." March 16th, Cape Town. A storm batters the coast, pulling boats from their moorings. In the morning, fishermen gather at the docks to count who's missing. They find one man asleep in his boat, having ridden out the storm with a bottle and a hymn. March 17th, Dublin. James Joyce, frustrated and half drunk, tears up a page of Dubliners. His wife picks the scraps off the floor and smooths them out. Later he uses her version. He never knows the difference. March 18th, Moscow. In a dusty theatre, a puppet show performs for factory children. The final act, a bear who refuses to dance for gold, earns unexpected applause. A police informant notes every name in the audience. March 19th, Chicago. An elevator operator named Ida Wells writes a letter to the Chicago Defender. She describes the new machines at the packing plant and how they don't smile back. Her closing line, "Steel replaced sweat." But no one asked if that was progress. March 20th, St. Petersburg. Tsar Nicholas II reviews the navy. Officers stand at attention, boots shining like mirrors. He waves distracted. In his hand, a telegram from his cousin, the Kaiser, full of jokes and warnings. No one notices the sailor who sneezes during the anthem and is later demoted. March 21st, Vienna. A young man named Adolf Hitler sketches buildings in a cafe ignored by everyone. He watches people pass with silent contempt. A waitress brings him coffee and says, "Smile once. It might save your soul." He does not smile. March the 22nd, Delhi. The colonial government announces a new tax on grain. Farmers gather in protest, holding signs in both Hindi and English. A child in the crowd asks, "Why do they need our food?" No one answers him. March the 23rd, New York. At Ellis Island, a boy from Naples looks out at the skyline. His mother tells him they've arrived in the land of opportunity. He replies, "It looks like a land of stone and smoke." A guard yells at them to move along. March the 24th, Munich. Kandinsky unveils a new painting, all color and chaos. A critic mutters, "A child with a brush could do that." A child nearby nods solemnly. March the 25th, London. Suffragettes chain themselves to the gates of Parliament. A member shouts, "We ask politely and are ignored. So now we ask loudly." A constable unlocks one woman and says, "My wife agrees with you," then arrests her. March 26th, Constantinople. In the Ottoman palace, a group of advisors argue over maps of the Balkans. The Sultan listens quietly, then says, "Borders are dreams drawn in ink, but people bleed." No one answers. March the 27th, Oslo. A schoolteacher writes on the blackboard, "Progress." She asks her students what it means. One says, "More factories." Another, "Less war." The youngest says, "More shoes for my sister." The teacher smiles, unsure which is right. March 28th, Madrid. A famous bullfighter refuses to kill the bull. He lays his sword on the ground and walks out of the arena. The crowd is silent. Later newspapers call him a coward, but in a small village someone names their newborn after him. March 29th, Cairo. A sandstorm delays trains for hours. In the cafe by the station, an old man tells stories to waiting passengers. One tale involves a talking camel and a lost prince. No one believes him. Everyone listens. March 30th, Rome. At the Colosseum, restoration work uncovers ancient graffiti, crude drawings and a short sentence. Glory is short. Bread is life. The archaeologist who finds it writes it down in his notebook, pauses, and doesn't say anything for the rest of the day. March 31st, Detroit. Henry Ford walks through his factory, watching the assembly line hum like a machine god. A new worker drops a bolt, picks it up, and is shouted at for slowing production. In the cafeteria, someone whispers, "This isn't a job, It's a rhythm you can't stop dancing to. April 1st, Warsaw. A tailor posts a sign. Clothing for workers and revolutionaries alike. A constable tears it down. The next day, 2 identical signs reappear. One in the window, one stitched into a jacket lining. April 2nd, Seoul. Under Japanese rule, students secretly read Korean poetry in cellars by candlelight. One boy recites a forbidden line. Even in shadow, the mountain remains. The others repeat it like a hymn. April 3rd, Stockholm. On the edge of the frozen harbour, a man proposes to his partner with a ring made of copper wire. She laughs, then cries and says, yes. They both fall into the snow, laughing. An old woman walking by says, 1913 is not such a bad year, after all. April 4th, Berlin. In a laboratory lit by flickering gaslight, a physicist finishes a paper on the photoelectric effect. His assistant asks, will it change the world? He replies, only if the world is ready for light to act like a question. April 5th, Buenos Aires. A tango band plays for dock workers as the sun sets behind crates of coffee and wool. A child dances alone on the cobblestones, copying the grown-ups. A sailor gives him a coin and says, you'll dance in Paris one day. He does. April 6th, Sarajevo. A student buys a revolver from a black market vendor. The seller says, planning something bold. The student answers, something necessary. He pays in full and leaves without looking back. April 7th, Tehran. In a quiet house, a scholar copies ancient Persian verses by hand. Outside, the street is filled with British and Russian soldiers. He writes, empires pass. Ink remains. April 8th, Boston. Emily Greenbalg lectures on peace and international cooperation. Only 12 people attend. One of them, a boy in the front row, takes notes furiously. He'll later become a diplomat. His first assignment, to a nation at war. April 9th, Brussels. A banker stands before a chalkboard filled with numbers and rising curves. He declares, gentlemen, the future is stable. In the hallway, a janitor mutters, only chairs are stable before they break. April 10th, Tokyo. In a school courtyard, children plant cherry trees as part of an imperial ceremony. One boy forgets to bow. The teacher scolds him. That same boy later becomes a poet. He never writes about trees. April 11th, Lisbon. A cobbler repairs boots for soldiers preparing to leave for Angola. He adds an extra stitch for luck, though no one notices. Years later, one soldier will return with one boot and a limp. April 12th, Philadelphia. A Quaker meeting begins in silence. A woman stands and says, we must prepare our hearts for what is coming. She sits back down. No one speaks for the rest of the hour. April 13th, Baghdad. A bookseller opens shop at dawn. His first customer asks for a story with no kings, no blood, and no fate. The seller smiles and replies, then, you must write it. April 14th, Paris. At a sidewalk cafe, a writer stares at a blank page. A friend joins him and asks, still nothing? He replies, I'm waiting for the century to speak first. That night, he begins a novel no one will read until after his death. April 15th, Chicago. In the stockyards, a boy watches his father butcher animals with practiced silence. He asks, do they know what's coming? His father doesn't answer. The boy becomes a vegetarian that same week. April 16th, Dublin. A teacher reads Yeats aloud to her students. A boy in the back whispers, why do poems hurt more than fists? No one answers. The teacher keeps reading. April 17th, Istanbul. A French tourist sketches the Hagia Sophia.
He writes in his journal, "This building has outlived more gods than I've prayed to." Later he loses the sketchbook in a rainstorm. It washes up days later near a fisherman's boat. April 18th, Johannesburg. A telegram arrives at Gandhi's residence. It reports a small legal victory in Natal. He folds the telegram neatly and places it under a stone. He tells his friend, even a pebble can help dam a river.
April 19th, Vienna. Sigmund Freud hosts a gathering of young thinkers. Someone jokes, "Soon we'll be psychoanalyzing empires." Freud lights a cigar and replies, "They'd be excellent patients, full of denial." April 20th, Jerusalem. Pilgrims climb the steps to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. An old woman reaches the top and weeps, not for her sins but because her knees still work. A priest nearby says, "Faith sometimes is just finishing the climb." April 21st, Moscow. In a candle-lit apartment, a dissident writes leaflets by hand. The ink smears on the last page. He curses, then shrugs and says, "Smudges are part of truth." He distributes them anyway. April 22nd, São Paulo. Workers organize a meeting in a shuttered warehouse. They speak in whispers and close the doors tight. A child watches through a crack and hears the word strike. He doesn't know what it means yet, but he will. April 23rd, Helsinki. A composer wakes before dawn and jots down a melody heard in a dream. He hums it softly, smiling. It will become a funeral march, but for now it sounds like spring. April 19th, Vienna. Sigmund Freud hosts a gathering of young thinkers. Someone jokes, "Soon we'll be psychoanalyzing empires." Freud lights a cigar and replies, "They'd be excellent patients, full of denial." April 20th, Jerusalem. Pilgrims climb the steps to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. An old woman reaches the top and weeps, not for her sins but because her knees still work. A priest nearby says, "Faith sometimes is just finishing the climb." April 21st, Moscow. In a candle-lit apartment, a dissident writes leaflets by hand. The ink smears on the last page. He curses, then shrugs and says, "Smudges are part of truth." He distributes them anyway. April 22nd, São Paulo. Workers organize a meeting in a shuttered warehouse. They speak in whispers and close the doors tight. A child watches through a crack and hears the word strike. He doesn't know what it means yet, but he will. April 23rd, Helsinki. A composer wakes before dawn and jots down a melody heard in a dream. He hums it softly, smiling. It will become a funeral march, but for now it sounds like spring. April 24th, Madrid. A painter unveils a mural of factory workers dancing. A critic scoffs, "This is fantasy. They don't have time to dance." The artist replies, "Then it's my job to give them the time." April 25th, Alexandria. Sandstorm. Booksellers cover their stalls, but one manuscript from the 15th century gets caught in the wind. It lands in the hands of a student walking home. He reads the first line and forgets the storm entirely. April 26th, Copenhagen. At a public lecture on electricity, a young woman asks, "Can it carry voices?" The professor laughs and says, "In theory." She grows up to design microphones for opera houses. April 27th, Calcutta. Tagore walks through a garden at dusk. He stops beside a dying tree and murmurs, "Even in decline, there's dignity." His student writes the phrase down and never forgets it. April 28th, Munich. A failed art student sells postcards on the street. He sketches people without asking, handing them drawings for coins. Most decline. One woman accepts hers and says, "You should try something else." He doesn't. April 29th, New York City. The Armory show closes its doors after 3 months. A janitor sweeping the floor finds a sketch of something he thinks is upside down. He hangs it right side up in his apartment, or so he believes. April 30th, Rome. A senator delivers a speech warning that the Balkans are a matchstick in a hayloft. The audience laughs politely. Only one journalist takes notes. He files the piece under domestic irrelevance. May 1st, St. Louis. Workers march through the streets for International Workers' Day. A boy waves a red flag taller than himself. Someone yells, "What are you fighting for?" He answers, "My father's hands." May 2nd, Budapest. A young engineer demonstrates a prototype for an automatic telephone switch. His professor says, "Clever. But who would want to talk without an operator?" The engineer doesn't reply. He's already designing the next version. May 3, Damascus. At a wedding, musicians play oud and drum as the groom recites verses about the moon. His bride corrects him. That line is about the sun. He smiles. Then we'll have both in our house. May 4th, Berlin. A young physicist argues in a cafe about the nature of time. An old man at the next table interrupts. Time is what keeps everything from happening at once. The physicist laughs but writes it down. May 5th, Rio de Janeiro. Carnival is over. Workers clean the streets, sweeping up feathers and fragments of costumes. One cleaner pockets a silver sequin and later gives it to his daughter, calling it a piece of magic. May 6th, Stockholm. In a quiet laboratory, a chemist accidentally creates a deep blue dye. He names it after his mother's eyes. Years later, it becomes the standard color for prison uniforms across 3 countries. Maipito, Manila. A librarian opens a shipment of books from America. Inside one volume she finds a pressed clover and a note. Good luck to the next reader. She places the clover between pages of a Tagalog dictionary, never telling anyone. May 8th, Warsaw. A violinist plays on a street corner. No one stops. He keeps playing until sunset. That night, a composer across the street writes a melody he doesn't recognize as the one he just overheard. May 9th, Lisbon. A poet mails his manuscript to a publisher, hands trembling. At the post office, the clerk says, "Don't worry, if it's good, it'll fly." The poet answers, "That's what I'm afraid of." May 10th, Kyoto. In a quiet temple garden, a monk watches cherry blossoms fall. A child asks, "Why do they fall so soon?" The monk replies, "So we remember them." The child collects one blossom and presses it in a book. May 11th, Detroit. Factory whistles echo at shift change. A young man watches the conveyor belt, fascinated. That night, he sketches an idea for a moving assembly line. He names it efficiency. May 12th, Prague. A woman walks out of a courthouse smiling. She has just divorced her husband, a rare act for the time. A reporter asks, "What now?" She answers, "Now, I get to become myself." May 13, Tunis. A traveler writes in his journal, "Every city sounds different. Tunis hums." He sketches the minaret near his hotel and notes the way
The shadow curves at sunset. Decades later, that sketch becomes the cover of a book he never intended to publish. May 14th, London. Suffragettes march past Parliament. One woman shouts, "Votes for women!" A man scoffs. "Next, they'll want to be Prime Minister." She replies, "No, just your boss." May 15th, Vienna. A young composer plays his new waltz in a smoky cafe. The bartender listens, nodding. "You'll be famous one day," he says. The composer smiles. "Only if someone else plays it." May 16, Istanbul. A baker shapes bread in silence at dawn. His apprentice asks, "Why do you always start with a circle?" The baker replies, "Because all hunger is round." May 17, Chicago. A boy picks up a newspaper and reads about a new skyscraper. He points to it and says, "One day I'll work up there." His father answers, "One day you'll build them." May 18, Paris. At a salon, artists argue over cubism. A woman says, "It's not a movement, it's a mirror." The others laugh until she adds, "And not all of you like your reflection."
May 19th, Madrid. A street musician plays a haunting melody on his guitar. A passerby drops a coin and smiles, saying, "Music makes the city breathe." May 20th, St. Petersburg. A revolutionary hands out pamphlets in a snowy square. He whispers, "Change is in the wind." A child takes one, tucks it away carefully. May 21st, Cairo. An archaeologist uncovers an ancient statue buried in sand. She brushes dust off its face and wonders about the stories it could tell. May 22nd, Melbourne. A cricket match is underway. A young player dreams of becoming a national hero, but is more focused on the next ball. May 23rd, Amsterdam. A painter sets up an easel by a canal. He captures the reflection of the water and the sky, searching for the perfect shade of blue. May 24th, New York City. In a quiet apartment, a playwright writes his first scene. His fingers hesitate over the keys, then he types. The story begins. May 25th, Rome. A street vendor sells fresh fruit. He watches tourists pass, noting how each seems in a hurry to somewhere else. May 26th, Brussels. A scientist records data on a chalkboard. His theory on atoms will later reshape physics, but today he is simply curious. May 27th, Cairo. A storyteller gathers children around a fire. He weaves tales of ancient kings and gods, keeping history alive. May 28th, Berlin. An architect sketches designs for a new city hall. He dreams of a building that welcomes all citizens, not just the powerful. May 29th, Paris. A young woman visits an art gallery for the first time. She pauses before a painting that speaks to her silently. May 30th, London. A factory whistle blows as workers begin their shift. Among them, a man dreams of starting his own business someday. May 31st, Vienna. A composer finishes a piano piece inspired by spring rain. He folds the sheet music carefully and sets it aside. June 1st, Tokyo. Cherry blossoms fall gently in a park where children play. An elder watches, smiling at their laughter. June 2nd, New York City. A newsboy shouts headlines from the street corner. His voice carries stories that shape the world. June 3rd, Moscow. A young student debates politics in a cafe. His friends listen, captivated by his passion for change. June 4th, Buenos Aires. Tango music drifts through the streets at night. Dancers move in sync, lost in the rhythm. June 5th, Istanbul. A calligrapher carefully inks a poem. Each stroke carries centuries of tradition. June 6th, Chicago. An inventor tests a new machine in a workshop. It hums quietly, promising progress. June 7th, Berlin. A poet pens verses on a park bench. Inspired by the spring bloom, he hopes his words will outlast the flowers. June 8th, London. A journalist files a story about rising tensions in Europe. He senses history is shifting beneath his feet. June 9th, Paris. An artist struggles with a new technique, frustrated yet determined. His canvas slowly begins to reflect a bold vision. June 10th, New York City. A factory worker listens to a speech about workers' rights. He dreams of better days ahead. June 11th, Vienna. A musician rehearses late into the night, perfecting a challenging piece. The moonlight filters through the window. June 12th, St. Petersburg. A student reads banned literature in secret, seeking knowledge and freedom. The risk is great, but so is the hope. June 13th, Rome. A philosopher writes about the meaning of time. His words will later influence thinkers across the world. June 14th, Madrid. A painter captures the sunlight filtering through olive trees. The colors blend like a whispered secret. June 15th, Berlin. A scientist presents findings on electricity's potential. His audience is skeptical but intrigued. June 16th, New York City. A writer finishes a novel, hoping it will inspire others. She closes her typewriter with a satisfied smile. June 17th, Istanbul. A merchant counts coins after a busy market day. He dreams of expanding his trade beyond the city walls. June 18th, Paris. A poet recites verses in a smoky cafe, capturing the attention of all present. His words linger like the aroma of strong coffee. June 19th, London. A suffragette organizes a peaceful march, rallying women across the city. Her voice rises with hope and determination. June 20th, Vienna. An architect drafts plans for a new concert hall, envisioning a space for music and community. June 21st, Moscow. Students gather in secret to discuss philosophy and politics, dreaming of a better future. June 22nd, Chicago. A baseball game draws a crowd, the cheers echoing under the summer sky. A young player hits a home run, igniting the crowd's excitement. June 23rd, New York City. A young journalist types rapidly, crafting headlines that will define the day. The clatter of the typewriter is the pulse of the city. June 24th, Rome. A street artist paints murals depicting ancient legends, blending past and present. June 25th, Berlin. A physicist tests a new theory in his lab, eyes bright with curiosity. June 26th, Tokyo. A gardener tends a bonsai tree, shaping it with care and patience. June 27th, Buenos Aires. A couple dances the tango under the stars, moving as one to the music of the city. June 28th, Sarajevo. In the quiet streets, military banners flutter. A soldier writes a letter home. Nothing ever happens here. He does not know how wrong he is. In just a year, the same streets will echo with gunfire. June 29th, St. Petersburg. An ice delivery man wipes sweat from his brow. The city is warming up and demand is high. A child watches the block melt into rivulets, fascinated by the slow disappearance of cold. June 30th, Paris. A seamstress completes an elegant gown for a duchess. She hums a lullaby she once heard as a girl.
Outside, workers strike, two worlds brushing past each other, never meeting. July 1st, London. A telegraph clicks steadily in a news office. The editor reads dispatches from across the world, tariffs, treaties, new machinery. He lights a cigarette, thinking of how fast everything changes, and how little. July 2nd, Tokyo. A scholar studies a Western medical text, translating each term into Japanese. He dreams of founding a hospital for the poor. In the garden, his daughter practices brush calligraphy in silence. July 3rd, Vienna. A string quartet performs in a candlelit salon. The guests whisper about politics between movements. One man murmurs, "It's a fragile peace. It won't last." July 4th, Boston. Firecrackers pop in the streets. A parade marches past and a little boy waves a small flag. His father, an immigrant from Poland, watches silently, proud, unsure, hopeful. July 5th, Cairo. A French archaeologist unearths a sealed jar near the Nile. Locals gather, debating whether to open it. A boy suggests it holds the laughter of the gods. July 6th, Berlin. A young man rides the elevated train, staring out at chimneys and factory roofs. He clutches an envelope, a rejection letter. Still, he resolves to try again. July 7th, Buenos Aires. A dockworker holds crates under the rising sun. He jokes with a friend about sailing one day, not as cargo, but as a passenger. July 8th, Istanbul. The call to prayer echoes over rooftops. In a narrow alley, an old woman kneads bread, her hands moving by memory alone. She remembers a war, a wedding, a brother long lost.
June 28th, Sarajevo. In the quiet streets, military banners flutter. A soldier writes a letter home. Nothing ever happens here. He does not know how wrong he is. In just a year, the same streets will echo with gunfire. June 29th, St. Petersburg. An ice delivery man wipes sweat from his brow. The city is warming up and demand is high. A child watches the block melt into rivulets, fascinated by the slow disappearance of cold. June 30th, Paris. A seamstress completes an elegant gown for a duchess. She hums a lullaby she once heard as a girl. Outside, workers strike, two worlds brushing past each other, never meeting. July 1st, London. A telegraph clicks steadily in a news office. The editor reads dispatches from across the world, tariffs, treaties, new machinery. He lights a cigarette, thinking of how fast everything changes, and how little. July 2nd, Tokyo. A scholar studies a Western medical text, translating each term into Japanese. He dreams of founding a hospital for the poor. In the garden, his daughter practices brush calligraphy in silence. July 9th, New York City. At Ellis Island, immigrants stand in long lines under the summer heat. A girl holds her mother's hand tightly. She knows only one word in English: tomorrow. July 10th, Brussels. A politician finishes a fiery speech about neutrality. His aides applaud. One of them whispers, "He still thinks the storm will pass us." July 11th, Warsaw. In a dim apartment, a teacher copies forbidden literature by candlelight. He pauses often, not out of fear, but to choose his words carefully. He wants them to outlive him. July 12th, Madrid. At a dusty bullring, the crowd roars, but in a nearby tavern, an old matador stares at the wall, sipping water. "Too much blood in this world already," he mutters. July 13th, Rome. Tourists swarm the Colosseum, fanning themselves in the heat. A local boy charges coins to guide them. He invents facts with flair and earns generous tips. July 14th, Paris. Bastille Day. Flags wave. Bands play. But in a small cafe, a widow sits alone, drinking black coffee. She once marched for liberty, and now watches the young repeat it. July 15th, Munich. In an art school studio, a rejected applicant sketches furiously. He crumples each drawing and tosses it aside. No one notices him. July 16th, Copenhagen. A scientist publishes a quiet paper about atomic structure. It barely makes the press, but in time, it will change the world. July 17th, Alexandria. On a rooftop, 2 astronomers adjust a telescope. A comet is expected. One murmurs, "The heavens remind us how small we are." July 18th, Dublin. A poet recites verses in a smoky pub. His voice trembles slightly, not from nerves but from passion. A stranger buys him a drink and asks for more. July 19th, Chicago. A jazz band plays to a packed dance hall. The rhythm is wild, the brass sharp and alive. Some say it's noise, others call it the future. July 9th, New York City. At Ellis Island, immigrants stand in long lines under the summer heat. A girl holds her mother's hand tightly. She knows only one word in English: tomorrow. July 10th, Brussels. A politician finishes a fiery speech about neutrality. His aides applaud. One of them whispers, he still thinks the storm will pass us. July 11th, Warsaw. In a dim apartment, a teacher copies forbidden literature by candlelight. He pauses often, not out of fear, but to choose his words carefully. He wants them to outlive him. July 12th, Madrid. At a dusty bullring, the crowd roars. But in a nearby tavern, an old matador stares at the wall, sipping water. "Too much blood in this world already," he mutters. July 13th, Rome. Tourists swarm the Colosseum, fanning themselves in the heat. A local boy charges coins to guide them. He invents facts with flair and earns generous tips. July 14th, Paris. Bastille Day. Flags wave, bands play. But in a small cafe, a widow sits alone, drinking black coffee. She once marched for liberty, and now watches the young repeat it. July 15th, Munich. In an art school studio, a rejected applicant sketches furiously. He crumples each drawing and tosses it aside. No one notices him. July 16th, Copenhagen. A scientist publishes a quiet paper about atomic structure. It barely makes the press, but in time it will change the world. July 17th, Alexandria. On a rooftop, 2 astronomers adjust a telescope. A comet is expected. One murmurs, "The heavens remind us how small we are." July 18th, Dublin. A poet recites verses in a smoky pub. His voice trembles slightly, not from nerves, but from passion. A stranger buys him a drink and asks for more. July 19th, Chicago. A jazz band plays to a packed dance hall. The rhythm is wild, the brass sharp and alive. Some say it's noise, others call it the future. July 20th, Constantinople. In the Grand Bazaar, merchants call out in 5 languages. A Russian sailor buys a scarf for his sister, smiling despite his homesickness. The scarf is red. She will never receive it. July 21st, St. Petersburg. A young noblewoman sneaks into a factory disguised as a maid. She wants to see how the other half lives. What she sees will haunt her. July 22nd, Amsterdam. A banker calculates profits, unaware a bubble is growing beneath his books. He toasts with champagne. The cork lands on a newspaper headline, warning of a coming crash. July 23rd, Vienna. An elderly composer finishes his final symphony. He doesn't title it. He simply writes, "For the world that is still possible." July 24th, Montreal. Children chase a dog through a muddy alley. Their laughter is shrill, unstoppable.
A man with a camera captures the moment, and a century later, we'll watch it again. July 25th, London. At the British Museum, a curator dusts a Mesopotamian tablet. He wonders, what will remain of us? July 26th, Lisbon. A fisherman repairs his net with gnarled fingers. He sings quietly in Galician, a song about storms and saints. July 27th, Calcutta. Monsoon rain floods the streets. Two lovers, barefoot, wade through water to reach one another. Their parents disapprove. The rain does not. July 28th, Belgrade. A newspaper prints an inflammatory article. A general folds the page, slowly. Soon, he says. His tea goes cold. July 29th, Washington, D.C. President Wilson walks the White House lawn deep in thought. He speaks to no one. Inside, a report from Europe lies unopened. July 30th, Prague. A clockmaker adjusts the hands on a cathedral tower. He notices a crack in the bell and jots down a note. To be repaired before autumn. July 31st, Zurich. A university student outlines a theory about energy and mass. His roommate yawns, but the student keeps writing. August 1st, Berlin. In a smoky cafe, philosophers argue over coffee. One quotes Nietzsche, another Marx. A third says nothing, just scribbles in his notebook, listening carefully. August 2nd, Stockholm. A nurse loads supplies onto a hospital cart. There's no war, but whispers travel. She dreams of quiet years not knowing what's coming. August 3rd, Florence. Artists gather at dusk, sketch in shadows on old stones. A student asks his teacher, will art survive the new century? The teacher only shrugs. August 4th, New Delhi. A prince reads a telegram from London. He burns it immediately. He will not serve an empire much longer. August 5th, Odessa. Dock workers unload grain under a searing sun. They speak in grumbles and silences. One hums a lullaby for his unborn child. August 6th, Edinburgh. An engineer tests a prototype for wireless transmission. It works. He rushes to send the first signal, only to realize he has no one to send it to. August 7th, Tokyo. Children fly paper kites in a temple garden. A monk watches, smiling, then turns away, to write a letter urging Japan to stay cautious, even proud. August 8th, Mexico City. Revolutionaries argue strategy in a backroom cantina. One holds a pistol, one holds a book. Both believe they are right. August 9th, Helsinki. A violinist performs in a crowded hall. The final note holds longer than written. Some swear it's the most beautiful sound they've heard. August 10th, New Orleans. Steam rises from the streets after a sudden rain. Jazz drifts from an open door. Inside, a boy sits at a piano, mimicking each note by ear. August 11th, Munich. A quiet exhibition opens in a corner gallery. Strange colours, sharp angles, abstract faces. A critic writes, "It won't last." August 12th, Cairo. Camel caravans cross into sunset. A French photographer snaps pictures certain they'll impress his editors. They do. But decades later, one photo becomes famous. Not for history, but for the child waving in the corner.
August 13th, Sarajevo. A group of teenagers practices a play in the back of a bookshop. One forgets his lines and makes a joke instead. The others laugh so hard they fall over the props. August 14th, Brussels. A mathematician lectures on probability to a half-empty hall. He says, "Events do not align for our comfort. No one writes it down, but it lingers." August 15th, Naples. A fisherman pulls in his nets and finds them nearly empty. He sighs, spits into the sea, and begins again. The tide doesn't care. August 16th, Krakow. At a wedding, a family sings old folk songs late into the night. An uncle dances with a lit candle on his head. Someone records it in a diary that survives the war. August 17th, Buenos Aires. A steamer arrives with immigrants from the Mediterranean. A girl stares at the city skyline, then turns to her mother. Do we belong here yet? August 18th, Leipzig. A physicist teaches a seminar on light. He's frustrated by the limitations of classical models. His assistant, quiet and serious, begins sketching a wave-particle diagram. August 19th, Istanbul. An imam and a rabbi sip tea together in the shade. They argue about poetry, not politics. The shopkeeper nearby listens with delight. August 20th, San Francisco. A cable car breaks down on a hill. Strangers get out and push together, laughing. For 10 minutes, the city feels like a village. August 21st, Zurich. A group of anarchists distributes pamphlets by moonlight. Their leader writes each by hand. Ink stains her fingertips black. August 22nd, Copenhagen. A young man reads Darwin for the first time. He closes the book slowly, then looks at his own hands. Everything changes, he whispers. August 23rd, Belgrade. A soldier polishes his boots, muttering about summer heat. In a letter to his mother he lies, no trouble here. The city is calm. August 24th, Vienna. At a garden party, diplomats laugh over wine. A violinist plays under the trees. No one notices the wind shifting. August 25th, Paris. A young poet stands on the Pont Neuf, reciting verses to the Seine. Tourists pass him by. He doesn't care. The river listens. August 26th, Warsaw. A printing press runs day and night. Pamphlets on labor rights in smudged ink flutter out like dark birds. Someone knocks at the door downstairs. The machine stops. August 27th, Chicago. Smoke rises from meatpacking plants. A union organizer is arrested for the 3rd time this month. His daughter carries on his work, unnoticed. August 28th, Athens. A marble bust is unearthed near the Acropolis. Archaeologists argue over its date. One insists she's smiling for the future. August 29th, Dublin. 2 boys steal apples and run from a shouting shopkeeper. They don't stop until they reach the docks. Years later, they'll remember this as the best day of their lives. August 30th, Moscow. A novelist throws his manuscript into the fire, page by page. Outside, a neighbor plays a sad tune on accordion. The flames whisper, then go quiet. August 31st, Rio de Janeiro. Carnival musicians rehearse deep into the night. Drums echo through narrow streets, waking babies and thrilling lovers. No one complains. September 1st, Budapest. A painter finishes a mural of St. George. He steps back and mutters, he's too perfect. He needs a scar. He adds one. September 2nd, Seoul. In a quiet alley, a teacher recites poetry to her students. The words are forbidden. One child writes them in her sleeve. September 3rd, Oslo. An explorer returns from the Arctic with frostbitten fingers. He kisses his wife's hand at the train station. He says, the silence there is too loud. September 4th, Algiers. Women in white robes gather for a wedding. A French officer watches from a distance, notebook in hand. He writes, unknowable rituals. He's wrong. September 5th, New York City. A skyscraper crew stops work to watch a plane pass overhead. It circles once, then vanishes into clouds. Bird, made of noise, says one man. September 6th, Madrid. A train leaves the station at dawn. On board, a schoolteacher writes lesson plans in a leather notebook. Across the aisle, a man sketches her without her knowing. September 7th, Quebec. The wind snaps laundry on lines behind brick houses. A boy runs past with a stick, chasing nothing. His mother hums in the kitchen, a tune older than the town. September 8th, Rome. An old man repairs shoes by candlelight. Each pair tells a story. He whispers prayers to the souls before setting them aside. September 9th, Prague. The bells ring unevenly. Clockmakers gather in confusion, check gears and springs. No one finds the cause. The bells continue, slightly off, for days. September 10th, Manila. Rain lashes against the windows of a telegraph office. A clerk translates a message from London. He doesn't understand its meaning, but he sends it anyway. September 11th, Hamburg. A warehouse fire burns through the night. Dock workers form a human chain with buckets. At dawn, they cheer. Nothing of value was saved except each other. September 12th, Lisbon. A woman sells oranges in the plaza. She sings as she does it. A visiting composer takes notes. The melody will reappear in his symphony years later. September 13th, Tbilisi. A chess tournament draws curious crowds. A teenager defeats a visiting master in 4 moves. He declines the prize money and asks for more books instead. September 14th, Amsterdam. Painters argue about color at a canal-side cafe. One insists the future is bright. Another says it's only shadow. September 15th, Philadelphia. Factory girls walk home with aching feet. One tells a joke that makes the others double over. For 10 minutes, they forget the soot on their skin. September 16th, Damascus. A caravan master writes receipts by lantern light. His son sleeps curled beside him, clutching a toy carved from olive wood. September 17th, London. At Hyde Park, a suffragette stands on a crate, shouting through horse lungs. Policemen close in, slow and sure. She doesn't stop. September 18th, Vienna. A psychiatrist walks alone through the city park, notebook in hand. He pauses by a fountain, watches children play, and jots down a single word: dream. September 19th, Helsinki. A small protest is held outside the governor's office. They sing a national hymn softly over and over. No arrests, no violence, but every passerby remembers. September 20th, Johannesburg. A gold mine holds work for an hour in memory of a dead foreman. Miners share bread and stories. One whispers, "We are not machines." September 21st, Kyoto. A bamboo grove shivers in the wind. A monk draws ink lines on rice paper, perfect circles. He burns them all when finished. September 22nd, Edinburgh. A scientist prepares a lecture on electricity. He drops his notes, picks them up out of order, and improvises. His theory sparks a new idea in the back row. September 23rd, Istanbul. A cat walks through the Blue Mosque during prayer. No one stops it. Someone murmurs, "Even she seeks peace." September 24th, Stockholm. A shipbuilder carves his initials into a wooden beam. His apprentice copies him. The beam ends up in a vessel that crosses the Atlantic. September 25th, Sofia. Thunder rolls over the rooftops. A child counts the seconds between flash and rumble. He gets it wrong and loves the thrill of it. September 26th, Tehran. An old calligrapher shows his granddaughter how to form the perfect letter. She imitates his hand, then adds a small flower. He laughs and calls it rebellion. September 27th, Munich. An opera singer loses her voice mid-performance. The audience sits in stunned silence. She bows anyway. The applause is louder than ever. September 28th, Boston. A librarian reshelves banned books under new labels. She hums a sea shanty and doesn't tell anyone what she's done. September 29th, Odessa. A sailor writes a farewell note before shipping out. He tucks it behind a loose board in the port tavern wall. No one finds it for decades. September 30th, Washington, D.C. Senators argue late into the night over banking reform. In the gallery, a bored stenographer sketches caricatures of them all. She adds devil horns to the loudest one. October 1st, Cairo. A bookseller dusts off a forgotten manuscript from the Mamluk era. He reads the opening line and shivers. The next morning, it's gone, sold for a coin. October 2nd, Barcelona. A street performer juggles knives in front of the cathedral. A priest stops to watch. He laughs when one blade sticks into a wooden post, an accidental crucifix. October 3rd, Karachi. Two women barter fiercely over silk. The vendor watches, amused as the price rises. They walk away smiling, having traded cloth for stories. October 4th, Krakow. A university student writes a play in secret. His professor finds out and demands to see it. He reads it twice, then asks if he may act in it. October 5th, Buenos Aires. A sailor off-duty plays accordion near the harbour. A couple dances nearby, slowly at first, then faster as more join. It becomes a crowd. October 6th, Zurich. A mathematician presents a theory no one understands. He returns to his flat and feeds his cat, wondering if it matters. October 7th, Belgrade. Rain pours through a leaking barrack roof. Soldiers play cards by candlelight. Someone tells a ghost story. The flame flutters and no one speaks. October 8th, Copenhagen. A clock tower chimes 13 times by accident. A child asks her mother if time is broken. The mother smiles, just dreaming a little longer. October 9th, Singapore. In a marketplace filled with steam and spice, a photographer captures a woman laughing. She never knows. Decades later, her great-granddaughter finds the photo in a museum. October 10th, Florence. An art student paints the same street over and over, obsessed with the shadows. He believes they hide something no one else sees. October 11th, Chicago. On the south side, neighbors hold a block party. A violinist plays until his fingers ache. That night, a girl decides she'll become a musician too. October 12th, Luxembourg. In a quiet valley, children race fallen leaves down a brook. One declares his leaf Emperor of Autumn. No one disagrees. October 13th, Calcutta. A poet stares at a blank page through the humid dusk. He finally writes, "What I fear most is forgetting how to begin." October 14th, Sarajevo. A cobbler notices two strangers watching him from across the street. He doesn't know why. They're gone before dusk. October 15th, Dublin. A printer accidentally misplaces a single letter in a political leaflet. The new phrase sparks laughter, and, unexpectedly, a rally. October 16th, Marseille. A storm batters the harbour. A stray dog finds shelter inside a shuttered chapel. When the priest arrives at dawn, he simply lets him stay. October 17th, Detroit. Factory horns blast as men pour into streets for lunch. Among them, a girl disguised in overalls eats quickly, unnoticed. October 18th, Bergen. Fishermen drag in a net heavier than usual. Inside, tangled with herring, a rusted compass. It still points north. October 19th,
Budapest. A violinist in a smoky tavern plays the same song 5 times. No one complains. They all lost something to that tune. October 20th, Naples. A grandmother tells her grandson about the mountain that sleeps. She taps his nose and says, "You wake it. You answer to the sky." October 21st, Warsaw. 2 tailors argue over a new cut of jacket. A passing dancer suggests a looser design. The result becomes unexpectedly popular. October 22nd, Rio de Janeiro. Theatregoers exit into warm rain. One couple dances barefoot in the puddles. A stranger sketches them under a lamplight. October 23rd, Shanghai. A schoolteacher reads a poem to her students. None speak after. One child looks out the window and sees his city differently.
October 24th, St. Petersburg. Winter whispers early. A poet walks the Nevsky Prospect, notebook in hand. He pauses by the frozen river and sketches a line of geese in flight. October 25th, Melbourne. A teacher collects stories from children about their dreams. Each night, she reads them aloud, stitching a patchwork of hopes. October 26th, Mexico City. Street vendors sell sugar-coated fruits. A young boy counts coins to buy a melody from a passing violinist. October 27th, Antwerp. Shipbuilders hammer rhythmically on a new hull. Their song echoes through the foggy harbour. October 28th, Havana. Cigarette smoke curls in the air. A jazz band tunes up in a back alley. Laughter and music spill onto the street. October 29th, Berlin. A photographer experiments with shadow and light. He captures a child chasing pigeons in the Tiergarten. October 30th, Lisbon. Fado singers gather in a small tavern. Their voices weave stories of love and loss. October 31st, New York City. Children dress in costumes for Halloween. A parade winds through the streets, full of carved pumpkins and laughter. November 1st, Kyoto. Cherry blossoms fall unusually early. A monk meditates beneath the pink rain. November 2nd, Cairo. A market stall owner recounts ancient tales to passing travellers. His eyes twinkle with forgotten secrets. November 3rd, Rome. An artist finishes a mural on a public wall. Passers-by stop to admire the vibrant colours. November 4th, Paris. Cafe patrons debate philosophy over steaming cups of coffee. Outside, the Seine flows quietly beneath the bridges. November 5th, London. Fog drifts along the Thames as a playwright hurriedly scribbles lines in a cafe. He watches the bustling city outside, seeking inspiration for his next act. November 6th, St. Louis. At the World's Fairgrounds, inventors demonstrate new machines that promise to change everyday life. Crowds gather, eyes wide with curiosity and hope. November 7th, Vienna. An orchestra rehearses a new symphony, its notes weaving through the grand concert hall, promising a night to remember. November 8th, Sofia. A farmer returns from the fields with a basket full of fresh produce. Children gather eagerly to taste the first fruits of the season. November 9th, Amsterdam. Canal boats glide silently under bridges as a painter captures the reflections on the water with delicate brushstrokes. November 10th, Prague. In a dimly lit cafe, poets recite verses filled with longing and revolution. The air hums with youthful energy. November 11th, Chicago. Veterans march solemnly in remembrance ceremonies, their medals gleaming in the autumn sun. November 12th, Brussels. Chocolate makers experiment with new flavors, delighting customers with sweet innovations. November 13th, Istanbul. Market stalls overflow with spices, textiles, and laughter
as merchants prepare for the coming winter. November 14th, Moscow. Snow begins to fall lightly over the Kremlin walls. Citizens bundle up and hurry through the streets, their breath visible in the cold air. November 15th, Lisbon. Fishermen mend their nets on the docks, exchanging stories of the sea and the storms to come. November 16th, New Orleans. Jazz musicians gather in smoky clubs, their melodies a blend of sorrow and joy, echoing into the night.
November 17th, Stockholm. The first snowflakes drift lazily over cobblestone streets. Children build snowmen, their laughter ringing through the cold morning air. November 18th, Havana. Cigar rollers work diligently, fingers stained with tobacco dust. A nearby cafe fills with the rich aroma of coffee and soft music. November 19th, Cairo. An archaeologist uncovers a small artifact buried beneath the desert sands. He brushes off the dust, wondering about its ancient story. November 20th, Madrid. Flamenco dancers practice late into the evening, their feet tapping rhythms that resonate with passion. November 21st, Buenos Aires. Tango music spills from open windows. A couple dances beneath the street lamps, lost in the music and each other. November 22nd, Warsaw. A writer pens a letter to a distant friend, describing the crisp air and falling leaves. November 23rd, Paris. Artists gather in Montmartre, sketching scenes of everyday life with quick, lively strokes. November 24th, Rome. The Colosseum stands silent under the moonlight. A historian walks its ancient stones, imagining the crowds of centuries past. November 25th, London. Theatres fill with audiences eager for new plays that challenge and entertain. November 26th, New York City. Street vendors sell roasted chestnuts as the city prepares for the holiday season. November 27th, Vienna. A young pianist practices a challenging sonata, her fingers dancing over the keys. November 28th, Istanbul. The call to prayer echoes through narrow streets, blending with the sounds of bustling markets. November 29th, Berlin. Winter's chill settles in as a clockmaker delicately repairs an ornate timepiece. Each tick echoes the passing of an era. November 30th, Florence. An elderly sculptor chisels away at marble, revealing the delicate form of a young woman beneath a stone. December 1st, Chicago. Snow blankets the city as families prepare for the holiday season, decorating homes with lights and evergreens. December 2nd, Cairo. The desert wind carries whispers of ancient secrets. A storyteller captivates children gathered around a flickering fire. December 3rd, Paris. A cafe buzzes with intellectual debates as writers and philosophers discuss the future of art and society. December 4th, Lisbon. Fishermen return from the sea with bountiful catches, their boats heavy with the day's labour. December 5th, Moscow. Citizens gather in the town square, lighting candles to ward off the long winter night. December 6th, Vienna. A composer completes the final notes of a symphony inspired by the changing seasons. December 7th, Buenos Aires. Theatres host performances blending European styles with local traditions, enchanting audiences. December 8th, Stockholm. Auroras dance across the night sky, mesmerizing a group of travellers huddled around a campfire. December 9th, Rome. Ancient ruins dusted with fresh snow evoke a silent reminder of history's endurance. December 10th, New York City.
Streetcars clatter through icy streets as holiday shoppers bustle, eager for gifts and celebration.
December 11th, London. The fog thickens as carolers sing softly on the cobblestones, their voices carrying warmth through the cold night. December 12th, Paris. Artists prepare for a winter exhibition, their canvases capturing the interplay of light and shadow in the city's streets. December 13th, Berlin. A scientist writes feverishly in his journal, exploring theories that could change the world. December 14th, St. Petersburg. Ice forms along the Neva River as families gather indoors, sharing stories by flickering candlelight. December 15th, Vienna. The Grand Opera House fills with patrons eager to hear a new production, promising a night of drama and music. December 16th, New York City. Shoppers navigate crowded markets, their breaths forming mist in the wintry air. December 17th, Rome. A sculptor finishes a marble bust of a local dignitary, capturing his stern yet hopeful expression. December 18th, Havana. Musicians play festive tunes in the plazas, inviting dancers to celebrate the season. December 19th, Amsterdam. Canals freeze lightly as residents skate gracefully, weaving patterns on the ice. December 20th, Madrid. Flamenco dancers perform in a bustling tavern, their passion undiminished by the winter chill. December 21st, Chicago. Families gather around hearths, sharing meals and laughter as snow falls gently outside. December 22nd, Istanbul. Lanterns light the narrow streets, their glow reflecting off ancient stone walls. December 23rd, Buenos Aires. The city hums with holiday spirits as families prepare special meals and exchange gifts. Children run through the streets, their joy contagious. December 24th, London. Church bells ring out across the city, calling the faithful to midnight mass. Snowflakes drift softly in the lamplight. December 25th, Paris. Families gather around tables laden with food, sharing warmth and stories in cozy homes. December 26th, Berlin. Street vendors sell roasted chestnuts as people stroll through festive markets decorated with twinkling lights. December 27th, St. Petersburg. The icy Neva glistens under the pale winter sun. Citizens bundle up for brisk walks, savoring the crisp air. December 28th, Rome. Ancient ruins take on a quiet majesty as snow blankets the city's historic sites. December 29th, New York City. Theaters showcase holiday performances, filling the streets with music and laughter. December 30th, Vienna. A composer conducts the debut of a new work, its melodies capturing the spirit of reflection and hope. December 31st, worldwide. As 1913 fades into memory, cities around the globe prepare to welcome a new year, full of promise and uncertainty. Fireworks light the sky, marking the passage of time and the dawn of new beginnings.